Hey friends, if you've ever reached for a bronzer in the summer and it just felt off, you felt more Cheeto than Bronze Goddess, this video is for you. Today's Get Ready With Me, I'm creating this soft, cool toned bronze look, also sharing a look with you about how stepping into more an authentic part of my life has really affected everything from how I interact with the world, my friends, my family, and myself. And it's given me the freedom to create. It's so special. So let's get right into today's video. Let's get started today working on the complexion. I want to retest a foundation newer to North America, Maybelline Super Stay up to 30 hour long wear Lumi matte foundation. And the shade I have is 112, which has a neutral cool undertone. It's the same shade I wear in my favorite Maybelline foundation, which is the Fit Me Matte and Poreless. Being a huge lover and a longtime lover of the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless, I was really keen to try out this one. I've had the opportunity to wear it a handful of times and I can't make it look good. Everyone I've seen review it on social media, creators I really like, when they've worn it, it looks so beautiful. I don't know if it's the primers, my sunscreen, what's going on, but when I've tried it on, it does not look great and it wears horribly. Today, I'm going to change my makeup application. I am going to skip primer. I did my skincare routine several hours ago and I just used a blot paper to go over top of my base. I'm going to start with the Lisa Eldridge Skin and Makeup Enhancing Mist. This is going to be my skin rehydration and primer step. Now we're going to try the Maybelline Lumi Matte again. I found with this foundation can be a little tricky to work with, so application is key and start with a little bit and work your way out. I also find this formula dries down very quickly. This month has been really interesting. I feel like June came and went so quickly. Reflecting on the month, it's really made me look back on everything that has happened through the month of June, and it's interesting. I have been trying to figure out how I want to do a Get Ready With Me and keep it different every single month because I love Get Ready With Me videos. That's one of my favorite types of videos to watch because it's a very intimate, almost like behind the scenes. Generally speaking, a Get Ready With Me video isn't something that's overly produced. You sit down, you apply your makeup, and you catch up with your friends, and that is what I love. I figured a Get Ready With Me would be a great opportunity at the end of every month to sit down, reflect on the lessons that life taught me over the past month, maybe share a few products I've tried out, whatever it may be that feels right in the moment. Because the end of last month when I shared a little bit about my background, what got me into makeup, what led to me moving to Canada, that was met with really positive response. And I would love to do that because I love that form of connecting with new people. And I loved how it made our connection here. Even with existing subscribers in the community, it just felt so genuine and pure. And I really like that. This month has been very interesting. With my gender transition journey, there's been a lot of therapy. And in Canada, therapy is not part of gender affirming care that is necessary. Like from my understanding in the US, you have to go through a certain amount and like prove your gender dysphoria before you even start the process. Here, that's not the case. And I feel like that has pros and cons on itself because I feel like in a perfect world, we would all have access to therapy because who doesn't have something in their life that they need to talk about or share about? And sometimes it's nice to have that person who you don't know. They're not your friends. They're not your family. They are a licensed professional. You can talk to them like a sounding board. It's a great way to get things out of your mind, off your chest, and just share them more openly. And it's also, it gives insight to things that bother you. Okay, working slowly with this foundation, it's looking good from afar. I don't have a little handheld mirror close to me. I'm working with the mirror behind my camera, and I'm working with these small amounts. This is maybe a quarter pump, and I'm taking a little bit of time working it into the brush and stippling and then spreading. This month, the lesson for me in therapy has been something I did not expect to struggle this much with, because over the last, I would say, 5 to 6 years, I've made taking care of myself, my mental health, my emotional health, I feel like I've made that a huge priority. But I was still struggling in certain facets because I feel like with anything in life, this is all part of a never-ending cycle. We learn, we grow, there's new opportunities to improve what we do, the way we see things. So that's been a big thing I'm working on, and something that kept coming up over and over and over in therapy is I need to set boundaries. Like, boundaries would stop XYZ from coming into play. And I finally asked my therapist, I'm like, what do you mean by boundaries? The way she summarized boundaries, they're almost like roadmaps to share with other people how we want to be loved. And I found that to be such an interesting thing, because boundaries, yes, you're telling people things that you do and don't like, and opens up opportunity for the people that you're interacting with to share similar things about themselves. It sounds so easy and so human nature. Through years of just different life situations, different upbringings, different cultural experiences, we're almost taught that our boundaries don't matter and that we need to move and sway to make everyone else around us more comfortable. But sometimes in doing that, we can sacrifice our own internal well-being. It's a very multifaceted topic that I found very interesting, very difficult to put into practice, but very interesting. Now I've got a layer all over. I am going to take a look in my little handheld mirror to see how this looks. Around my mouth, it is setting a little bit more heavy than I like, and it does look more like makeup on my skin than I personally prefer, but this is the best this foundation has looked, and I feel like as it warms up a little bit more, it will look even better. We are going to add a little bit of color corrector because that is something I love doing, and I find when I apply my foundation first, I get a better result with my color corrector with my makeup practice. Something I need to work on is when I apply my color corrector first and I start blending, even when I let it set, that product can gradually move and spread. So that way my color corrector here, this orange, migrates upwards, and then my face ends up being a little bit darker than I want to because it throws off the harmony of my face, neck, and my chest. Doing it a little bit over top of my foundation makes it easier, and that way it's a little bit easier for me to blend in. Now I'm using a more pink shade. I saw a video where people were applying a little bit of highlighter under their eyes, and I found that very interesting because it reminded me of a makeup faux pas I used to make in my very early years. When I first started off with makeup, I was a huge lover of just learning and absorbing all the different things. Like, if I could get my hand on a makeup resource, I would jump at the opportunity. So one of the first things I did was purchase the Kevin Kwan Making Faces book, and I still have it on the bookshelf behind me. In that book, there's a big section where Kevin Kwan talks about highlighting and the benefit of using a highlighting powder under your eyes, around your mouth, and just different areas to bring the face forward. And I found that so interesting. So I remember at that point, I didn't have a ton of money to go to like MAC or a department store and buy makeup, and we didn't have a Sephora or Ulta anywhere near. At that point, I remember I went to Walmart and I was looking for something called highlighter. I think they called it like highlighter or something like that. If I can remember, I'll put a picture on the screen, but I found it at Walmart, and it was like a bronzer that was labeled as a highlight from the brand Hard Candy. That was a very reflective powder, and I used to use that in a triangle under my eyes. So then I ended up having this very glittery triangle under my eyes for like months until someone told me that wasn't how you highlighted. But now I'm seeing people apply a little bit of liquid highlighter under their eyes, and I really like that. So I'm going to use just a tiny dot of my Auric Glow Lust in Morganite. I'm going to apply a little bit right here. Getting back to boundaries, it has been a very interesting lesson because something I thought was going to be very cut and dry, like, okay, well, I know what my boundaries are. I can just put these in place, and when someone does something that I'm not comfortable with, I can share what my boundary is and it will be easy. Well, it wasn't easy. The first thing I had to do is figure out what my boundaries are. What are the things that make me uncomfortable? And that was really complicated. First, I'm thinking the people I keep around me, the people who are everyday fixtures in my life, of my family, friends, I don't have issues with people crossing or neglecting my boundaries. Like, I feel like the people I surround myself with are very respectful. And then there was a small occasion with someone I was interacting with, and something happened that made me feel less than ideal. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. A few days later, I met with my therapist. It was still very fresh in my mind. I'm like, this is what happened. What is this? Why does this make you feel this way? And then she shared me that's a great example of someone crossing a boundary. And I said, oh, okay. Because up until that point, I was under the thought boundaries were like these big red flags, like almost like one of the 10 commandments, like thou shalt not kill or something like that. I thought that in my mind, that was like the severity of a boundary. I didn't realize a boundary could also be, I don't feel up to going to this place. I don't want to talk about this subject, and it's pushed. Like, I didn't realize there was these small everyday interactions that can happen. They happen to all of us, but I didn't realize if we say no to something like that, I didn't realize that counted as crossing a line or a boundary. And I feel like that's something that a lot of us do. I mean, I know I'm guilty of that. Like, if someone says they don't want to go to Starbucks or something, it's like, are you sure? Are you really sure you don't want to go? Like, and it's never out of like malicious intent. It's just like, are you sure you don't want to go? Because like yesterday you wanted to go. It was in that moment when I realized, I was like, oh, I have crossed other people's boundaries. Even people who are really close to me have crossed mine. And it's just, it was very interesting. It was a very big moment of clarity. So I was like, oh, wow, this is very interesting. And then that got my mind thinking when I was planning out what I wanted to talk about in this video, because when we go from June to July, July has so many different holidays. We have Canada Day. In the US, there's 4th of July, there's Bastille Day. You have a few different holidays that are all about like freedom and liberation. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting because with our makeup, there is so many different styles of makeup that you can be free and you can feel liberation from the trend cycle to do what makes you happy within the way you express yourself, the way you want to live your life. There are so many different ways to be free and express yourself. And I'm like, wow, this is really powerful because there's so many ways you can cross-reference different things from our surrounding world into our personal life and our inner workings. I just found that really interesting and really inspiring. And when I was thinking about that, I'm like, how can I work this into makeup? And it made me kind of think, because the video that's going up before this video would be my cool, true summer seasonal color analysis video. And in that video, a lot of the things I was trying to work through is how to do makeup that creates the full effect of doing all the different steps, but keeping it cool toned. And when I was thinking about how can I carry that into this video, because I want things to feel cohesive, when I think about summer, June, July, August, these core summer season months, I think about bronzer and creating tan, glowy, bronzy looks. But a lot of times, if you're really, really cool toned and you put on a traditional mainstream bronzer, you look more like a Cheeto than a bronze goddess. And I don't really want to walk around looking like a Cheeto. Today, we are going to do a really beautiful, cool toned bronzy look. I'm going to start off with a Maybelline Tattoo Studio pencil. This is a gel pencil liner in the shade Intense Charcoal. Applying liner roughly at the lash line. And I'm going to go ahead and lift up just a little bit and then carry it back in. I love the outer V eyeshadow, and I don't think that's something I will ever stop loving. I'm going to use this as my starting point, and I'm going to start with a small little pencil brush. Working with that pencil eyeliner, I'm going to start smudging it in, creating a nice cool toned smoky base. And when you're doing this, you can do one side, do both sides. It doesn't really matter. I would just say before you go on to the other side, when you're working with your pencil, blend it out, then move over. Don't leave it to sit and dry because then it might be a little too difficult to blend out. I've got a little bit of creasing on my eyelid where I used a little bit of concealer to put my eye. Don't worry about it. We're still working with creams, so there is plenty of opportunity for us to go through and smooth it out. With this technique, I'm very much inspired by a trend I've been been seeing pop up on short form content. And that is this reverse eyeshadow technique, which is very interesting because it's almost like the reverse way of doing like a typical smoky eye. Because normally when we're doing a smoky eye look, we work our way from the lightest shade, which is normally our all over base shade. Then we'll go a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. This technique is the way I originally learned to do a smoky eye, because the way I learned in school to do a smoky eye was to start with your darker shadow, and that way you can get it on and figure out where you want the depth to be, and then you can use that as like your anchor point, and then you can further blend it out, blend it out, blend it out until you get something close to the skin tone, and that will be your light point. As the years went on, I started working for different companies, things like that, learning from other artists. That is when I learned the more traditional light to dark. For my cool tone bronzy eye, I'm gonna go for an old favorite. This is the ColourPop That's Taupe 9-pan eyeshadow palette. We have a really beautiful assortment of more cool neutral shades. There are a few shades, kind of like this middle shade called Pebble Beach, which does lean a little bit warmer than some of the other shades, but this is a really beautiful palette if you want to create a warm bronzy look, but you are someone who prefers more cool tone shades. I'm gonna go for it off the bat, and I'm gonna start with Bedrock, which is the darkest matte shade, and I'm gonna start with just a little bit, and I am just going to stamp right over. As I'm blending, I am sticking with the concentration of the shadow on my eyeliner. I want my liner to be darkest here on this outer corner, and then I will pat across and then go back to the outer V section, pat, and then I will blend from the outside to the inside, and then I'll go back to the eyeliner portion and smoke it up. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm getting that depth of color on, and then we're gonna go through and continue to lighten it up. Something else I've been really having fun with as I've grown and progressed over the years, especially the last few years, I would say really thinking about the last 3 years, there's just been a lot of growth and change with what's going on in my life. And I've found that with the makeup techniques I had been doing previously, I wanted more variety. There was things that I had gotten to the swing of doing on clients when I was working in makeup as a makeup artist, but there was a lot of things like for my everyday look, my look was very cut and dry. I did the same type of no makeup, enhancing look every single day just because that was my comfort zone, something that gave me the freedom to play with the products I loved, but I never would do a look like this. And then learning and figuring out how to do these looks that I loved and wanted to play with on my own eyes, on my own features. When I would sit down to try it, it always felt wrong. I would remove it, go back to what I knew. So now that I have more freedom, I am more comfortable expressing who I am, it's like I'm learning makeup all over again. And I have to say, doing like a smoky eye, a wing eyeliner on myself versus a client is so different and so challenging. Next, I'm gonna go to the shade Python, which is like a muted mauve blackberry. And I'm going for a little bit of a larger brush. And I'm gonna use this to start lightening up the darker shade, mostly in the outer corner. And I'm just stamping. As I get less product on my brush, I will move a little bit closer in, but the depth of the color, I wanna stick to more of an exaggerated V shape, and then I'll blend in. Again, we're gonna go through lighten up. If I make a mistake here on the outer corner, I haven't powdered, I can always clean it up, redefine my shape. When you're going from dark to light versus light to dark, you definitely have more of that ugly phase where you have to trust the process. You have to go with just knowing that it's gonna look really bad, and then you are gonna hit a point where it looks really good. So trust the process. Don't get intimidated, just go with the flow. Now I'm gonna use the shade Boa, and I'm gonna use the small flat packing brushes. All of the brushes I'm using for my eyes are from the BK Beauty Angie Hot and Flashy collaboration. So now with this lighter matte shade, it's still deeper than I personally like for my all over lid shade, but this is gonna help me to lighten up the bulk of the lid, and also I can use it to clean up down here. So now we're getting more of this gradation of color. I'm between Snake Eyes and Cold Blooded. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take both shades on the back of my hand. I like this like pink shift from the shade Snake Eyes, so I might play with that. I'm gonna tilt my chin up and I'm gonna start here just shy of the 3/4 mark, and then I'm gonna work my way right across the eyelid. That is so pretty. Going back to that flat brush I used with the shade Boa, the lightest matte, I am going to use this round corner buff on the edge of the shimmer, so that way I can create more of like a satin midpoint to where you can't really see where the shimmer stops and the matte starts. I want a nice gradient point. Go to the second slightly larger pencil brush, going back to the shade Python. I am going to pick up just a pinch of the shadow, and I am going to do the same process here on the outer corner. This part's totally optional. You can really leave it with just the shimmer on the lid where we had it. I find it a lot of fun to go back and strategically intensify where you want it. When I'm applying the shadow, I want it to be the darkest here on this lid. So once I have a little bit more out there, then I'll go through and start diffusing the line between the shimmer and the matte. Then I go back to that smallest brush. I'm not going to add any additional because there should still be residual from the darkest shade, and I just want to soften out that line. Now I have a little pointed cotton bud, and I've just damped it with a little bit of Bioderma. So what I like to do is look into a little mirror, look straight ahead, and I am just going to lift up. And then I like to go to the dry side. And that way now I have more of a defined edge. And that's the great thing with doing this. I can patch up the concealer right where I did this, but I don't have to retouch my concealer, the powder, the highlighter, the bronzer, because that can get a little choppy. Now I'm going to go back to the second crease brush, and I'm just going to very gently start here on this outer corner, and I like to press right on that seam that I just created and wiggle. And this is going to help reduce the sharpness of the line that I just created, because I don't want a very strong line. I don't have a lot of contrast in my natural features. I am definitely more on the light medium side of the contrast scale. So if I have a very hard line on the corner of my eye, it can read as a little too sharp. It can add a little too much contrast. So I like to soften it down just a bit, and then I'll further soften it and blend it when I go through with my concealer. But before I even think about my concealer, since I've already got a little bit of cleanup I needed to do, let's finish the eyes and really finish off this illusion. Now I'm going to take this lightest shimmer shade called Slated, and I'm going to use this flat packer brush. You could use your fingers, but I don't want this shade in a very large area. I want to keep it a little bit more targeted. So I'm going to use this to press here on the inner corner. I like to press and pull, very much keeping this like a spotlight placement right where I want the color payoff. Just gives a little pop. Something I also really love to do is I like to exaggerate my inner corner. It's gonna help to add a little bit more light, so it's gonna make my eyes look a little bit further apart, but it's also going to pull the corner of my eye onto the side of my nose. So at a 3/4 view, it's gonna make my nose look a touch slimmer. Now I'm gonna use the shade Cold Blooded, which is the more silvery, and I'm gonna tap this almost as like a transitional point between that light inner corner and the shade Snake Eyes that we applied. So I like to apply with my index finger, then I'll use my middle finger just to pat out the line where the other two colors intersect. From there, you can add liner if you want to. I don't really feel like I need it. We'll add mascara. So for me, the eye is good here. I'm going to tidy up the outer corner in just a moment. Let's touch up the concealer. And again, so I don't want things to be too high coverage. I'm going to use a standard concealer shade. This is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer in the shade Vanilla. This is a great skin tone match for me. And the other shade I used earlier was the shade 1.5B from Huda Beauty, which is more of a really pretty brightening shade for my skin tone. And I'm gonna use my BK Beauty A506. This is such a beautiful multitasking brush. I love using it to clean up my eyeshadow. I love it to conceal face under my eyes. I'll even use it right here under the tail of the brow. Something else that's a little fun, where you've got this like little sloped edge, I'll sometimes go through right here just to round out the inner corner a little bit. This is also a great brush that I love using to apply my base eyeshadow. So if I'm doing like a cream eyeshadow, like a MAC paint pot, or even just like an all over eyelid shade, this is a really lovely brush for that. Again, I've got a sharp line, so I'm going to use that flat packing brush. This is the brush I used with the lightest matte shade, and I don't want a very strong line, so I'm going to use this lighter shade just to diffuse out that point, and that's to help give me a little bit of a gradient. And it's interesting because on me, I'm not using very extreme shades. We are going light to dark. Darkest shades are really kind of hidden. They're in the background. They are very much an underpainting layering technique out here on the outer corner, but I've gone just deep enough from my natural features that I've created contrast that it's gonna look a little bit more intense than it would on other people. That's something I really love about seasonal color analysis. Even though I've not gone dark, since I'm someone who falls in the light color palette, when I go too dark, it can go really deep, really smoke. If you put this someone who's on a true summer or even a soft summer with more of those gray shades really woven into the magic of their palette, this is gonna look a lot more subtle. So in that case, you would just build it up ever so slightly. Just keep building little by little until you're there. You want something that's smoky, but not over the top. Now for my loose powder, I am just using my beloved loose powder container that I mixed all of them together. So this is just a big, generous loose powder bin, and I'm using that to set my eyes, patting, and then buffing. Where I just applied that lighter mid-tone shadow, it's gonna allow me to further blend and smoke my eye makeup out now using my setting powder. So you can see this side to this side using a translucent setting powder. I have a softer, more diffused look on this side versus this side. This is very sharp, it's almost graphic. Over here, we're just a little bit softer, and all I'm doing is using my Real Technique setting brush with a blend of different loose, translucent setting powders, and just going around the edge and creating a soft, smoky eye. One of the most fascinating things about this technique, and I remember learning this in makeup school. I remember the day that my instructor showed this to us. I was just so overwhelmed. I'm like, how am I gonna do that? I don't have that type of skill. I was very green with makeup, and even though I'd been working on counter at that point, I was not that great. But it was really interesting seeing how this one step just takes your makeup look, and you take it from something that's looking a little rough, a little scary, and you're just now softening it up. And the interesting thing is the point of this brush, where you have this more rounded taper to the brush, that is what's touching the edge of the eyeshadow, and it's almost tickling a blend. It's almost like a watercolor diffusion. Just very, very soft, but it makes all the difference in making your makeup feel a little bit more soft, a little bit more diffused, a little bit more approachable. Before I go through and set the rest of my face, I'm gonna grab my magnifying mirror. I'm gonna come in a little bit closer to you, and we are gonna look at the Maybelline Lumi Matte up close. Compared to a little bit ago, it is looking a little bit smoother. My chin is not looking that great, but when I tap it out, it looks better. It's looking smoother. I think that looks nice. This is nicer than it's looked. I feel like as my skin continues to warm up, this adjusts, some of the natural oil from my skin comes through, it's going to make this foundation look beautiful. So I feel like with this foundation, this might be one of those ones where the less prep is better. Since this is more of a satin matte, I don't need a ton of powder, so I'm going to use that same loose powder I just used around my eyes with a large fluffy brush. This brush is just going to help everything else set down, so that way I can blend on top a little bit easier. And also, where this brush is now kind of got some loose powder mixed into it, it's going to allow me to blend out some of my other products a little bit easier. I mentioned earlier that bronzers can make you look like a Cheeto, but I'm going to start off with a bronzer, and one of my favorites, especially if you're more neutral to cool, I love the Laura Geller Baked and Bronze in the shade Fair. If you are a true cool undertone, this might still pull too warm for you because most bronzers are going to have a little bit of that warmth in it just because most people do get a little bit more of a warm golden tone. This has got a little bit more of that golden tone with the beige swirled mixed with that more warm ready bronze and this baby pink vein running through it. But when that mixes with the natural skin tone, it can start to pull a little bit warmer, a little bit more on that peachy side. But if you're someone who is very, very cool toned, if you are someone who is extremely sensitive to the temperature of your colors and you see this bronzer, whether it's on me or someone else, and you want to try it out and you feel like, oh no, it's gone too warm, or if you have a blush, I'm going to show you a trick in just a moment on what to do. So for my demonstration, I'm going to take this a little bit further than I typically would. I need more color impact so that way we can see. And I am not the best person because I am more on the cool neutral side. I'm not overly cool. Large fluffy brush, same bronzer, run it through the socket of your eye. And same thing here on the outer corner. And I like to finish off with whatever's left under the eyes. This is going to help frame the eye and just make it look so pretty. And it's going to add a more cohesive feel to the rest of the face. If you are someone who struggles with your eyeshadow and you feel like no matter what you do, it just never feels blended, try this trick. Whatever you apply on your face, try running just a pinch through the crease of the eye. You've put your bronzer on, you're feeling a little warm, a little peachy, and that is the last thing you wanted. You feel like you are now an apricot or an orange or a Cheeto, whatever it might be. Let's troubleshoot and figure out what's happening. When you're sensitive to temperature, anything even with a hint of warmth is going to show more true, more vibrant because we have contrast. So when we're thinking about something that looks too peach, too orange, how would you tone that down? And normally we think about color correcting, but how are you going to color correct an orange stripe? That is where something like this blush palette from Korean beauty brand DC comes into play. This is the Mood Blush palette, and I think this is number 11 Cream Soda. So this looks a little unassuming. You have these two lighter shades, and then you have these two more muted shades. What I love is this light blue is more of an expanding shade, so that would typically use to flatten the tone or plane of the face, almost like a matte highlighter. But you can also use these more sheer formulas. You see they don't have a ton of color payoff. I'm gonna now take a fluffy brush, and you could use one shade or both. Since this has a little bit more peach in it, I'm going to focus onto the blue, and I'm going to tap that right over and then blend, and you'll see this starts to shift slightly more rosy because I'm adding a little bit more coolness in it. So now if you look here to here, this almost looks more of like a blusher versus this side which has a little bit more warmth, and that's just because we're really emphasizing, we're adding blue, so the blue is almost create more purple when blended with a bit of red. This is a great way, and you can find these more blue powders, either blue or purple. You can find them in a lot of K beauty and C beauty. I'll have everything linked in the description box down below. But if you have something like this, you can even use this pink shade. Go right here to brighten up. If you want something like the Huda Beauty Cherry Blossom Powder, but you're between something like that and this, you could mix these two shades to create your own under eye brightening flush. And these are very finely milled powders, so they just add a nice smooth filter over the skin. So now I've got a little bit of bronze on. I like to reinforce my bronze, especially for cool toned people. I like using blush shades that feel a little bit more sunburned. And since we are cool toned, I want to go for more of a burnished bronze plum. So I'm going to use a very small amount of the Pat McGrath Divine Rose Blush. This has a lot of pigment, so be sure to remove most of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go right on top of where we applied that bronzer. So you're almost placed on the top of the cheekbone, then swiping down. Same thing when you get to the forehead. If you apply bronzer to your forehead, sweep up. So what this is going to do is you're taking the tip of the brush where there's not going to be a lot of product that goes on your skin, and then you flick and blend down, you're adding burn to your bronze. And this is gonna make it feel more like your skin. This is gonna make this bronze goddess look come to life because you are customizing and making this the most authentic, true bronzer shade for you, and you don't have to worry about looking orange or muddy. And this is a great way to take a trend and make it your own. This is you creating your own version of like a JLo glow. Now for me, when I think about a suntan glowy look, I think about glow. And for me, glow comes with bronzer. I'm gonna be using the Haus Labs Biogel highlighter in the shade Rose Quartz. And I'm almost gonna go in this like little V shape right here on the front of the cheeks. Since this is more of a pink shade, I want to flush the front of my cheeks because this little V area right here, this is a high point of the cheek. So when you get a sunburn or a little too much time in the sun, this can flush. And it's almost like you've had your sunglasses on all day and you just got a little extra bit on the cheeks. And it's got glow, so it's gonna bring it forward, bring it in with the center point of the face. That is great. Something I now like to do, go to my large fluffy brush. I'm gonna take this, make my tones blend, pick a little bit there, just whatever's left on there. Go back to my Pat McGrath blush. And again, there's so many great shades, but you just want to look for a mauvey rose. It's got more of that gray base that feels like your skin, but 2 to 3 shades deeper than your skin. Take a little bit of this just here on the outer corner. If you want to, you can even take a little bit right here. And you can see we're adding that drama back, but compared to before, now we've got the same tones in our eyes that we do on the face. So things are just feeling more at home. It's feeling more balanced. For me, nothing sets off a beautiful sun-kissed look more than a hot blush. I'm gonna use the classic Dior Rosy Glow in pink. This is the previous formula, and I'm just gonna put that right here on the front and then work back. This is going to shift the tone ever so slightly, but I like to keep it on the front of the cheek and work back. I just want a little bit of a flush, and where I'm wrapping this into these more bronzy tones, I am going to create more of a flushed look. And then now that I have less on my brush, I'm going to angle the point. That's why I love a good angled blush brush. A little bit here, over the nose, over the chin, the high points of my face. You can even do a very gentle W motion. That will help to diffuse the color, but I'll also add a little bit of a cheeky lift. Now I want to get a little bit of color, and where I got a little bit of concealer and powder around my lips, that is perfect because I've also put a little bit of powder on, and that residual powder has set on top of my lip balm. I have a dry base. This is going to help keep my lip product on all day. I'm now going to use a little bit of the Dior Rouge Forever in number 265 Hope. This is a really beautiful pinky nude that is quite matte, but it stays on. This lipstick, I was a little thrown off when I first purchased it because it's quite dry. If you go to wipe it on your lips like this, you will feel a lot of drag because it is a very dry formula. But what I really love about this shade is I find it creates a really beautiful base. Even trying to rub my lips, I love blotting my lips together. I love doing the rub. It's a little too dry to do that, but that's perfect because now I have a base. So now that I've got this more light pinky base, I want to make it feel a little bit more lively because even though it's a nice soft pink, very much works with the over tonality of the face, it feels a little lifeless. I want to make it feel a little bit more toasty. So I'm going to use my RMS Go Nude lip pencil in the shade Morning Dew, and I just want to use this ever so slightly on the perimeter. So now we've got a little bit of a line. You can blend if you want. I love the brush on the back of this RMS lip pencil. This is almost more of like a brownie mauve. It's quite gray in its base. Really nice for adding shape. And for me, this feels like a really nice everyday lip color. But if I'm gonna go out at night, I wanna add a little bit of color. So I'm gonna do one of my favorite things. Think of this next up like a lip gloss that has a little bit more longevity. This is a Lisa Eldridge Luxuriously Lucent lipstick, and the shade is called Love of My Life. This is a warm, sunny, bright pink. So I like to take it on the inside of the lip and use it to brighten up. So we're getting a nice boost of color. It's a nice warm gradient, and you can just continue to build until you're happy. If I want to swipe, I'll take it on the very inside of the lip, and that way we now have a nice soft gradient of shades. And what I like is the matte lipstick and the pencil will stay on all day. As you eat or drink, the luxuriously lucent lipstick will fade a little bit, but it's so easy to retouch. And another thing I love is, since it is hot, we are in the summer, we are having little heat waves everywhere. Take a little bit between your fingers, rub, 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 and you can even use it to refresh your blush throughout the day. Some people are okay with just the bronze on the lower lash line. Some people like a little bit more. If you want a little bit more, I like to use a slightly larger pointed brush. I'm gonna use the shade Boa, which is that lighter inner color. And I'm gonna run this just under the lower eye. Already got your bronzer there, so that's gonna give you a little bit of depth. And then I'm gonna use a blend of the shade Snake Eyes, just for a little bit of a light reflect. And then if you wanna add just a little bit of something, the shade Constrictor, this is almost like a burnished olive. So now you are good to finish off. I like to finish off with a little bit of brow and mascara. Applied a coat of the Maybelline Firework. I love this mascara. It's a little too subtle, so I'm gonna use a little bit of my Lash Sensational Waterproof right on top because I want this look to be quite lashy. Right now we've got that on. Let's see how these bangs turned out. Do I have a good fringe day? Okay, this is a great fringe day. Fringe bangs, whatever you want to call them. This piece here, I might retouch a little bit. It feels a little... For summer, I'm gonna use one of my favorite Molten Brown Flora Luminar. I sprayed way too much, but it's gorgeous and it's such a great summer scent. I'm having so much fun with my summer fragrances and my summer look all together. And I say this, I feel like all the time, but like the impact it's had on my life since starting my gender affirming journey. I still have like 60 pounds to go because I've been on a weight loss journey. I'm somewhere in like the 40 to 45 pounds down mark. And it's been so hot. I haven't been going for my evening walks because it's like scorching. But even though I'm not close to my goal, I feel so much better in my skin, getting to express myself and do the things I've always wanted to do. I just feel so free and liberated. And now that I have like the tools I'm sharing with you about boundaries I learned from my therapist, I feel unstoppable and I just feel so happy and free. And I just hope I can share that happy and freeness with all of you while creating these fun summery makeup looks. If you had fun learning how to create a cool toned summer bronze look, make sure you give this a thumbs up. And if you want to see more about my makeup looks and hear a little bit more about me, I would love to have you here for the long term. I post new videos every week, so subscribe for more content. I will have all of the products from my outfit to my nails. Everything will be listed in the description box down below. Until we see each other again, I hope you're taking care of yourself wherever it is you are in the world. Bye, y'all.